Hi, it's Kat here from Jolly Jam Journals. I just wanted to do a quick video to show a journal that I created from Nick the Booksmith's Deserted Island Challenge. Nick challenged us on our resources, and the premise of the challenge was that we were on a cruise ship that went down and it washed up on shore on a deserted island. But I did have a few things on me in my waterproof fanny pack, and so we were given 4 gibbons that we were allowed to use. So the paper, we were allowed any type of paper. It had to be one type of paper, and I chose coffee dyed paper, and I used every scrap of coffee dyed paper that I had, so I have to make some more now. And the other given was the scissors. So these are my scissors that I used, and we were allowed one type of glue. So I used this fabric glue, which I got, you can get from Spotlight stores, and needle and thread. But we were only allowed like the one needle and the one thread throughout the whole making of the journal. So this is what I chose. And then we were allowed 4 chosens. So I chose to use scrapbook paper. This is the scrapbook paper that I used. It's a Kaiser Craft scrapbook paper. And I chose some fabric, an old book cover, and some ink and applicator. So I used Distressing Vintage Photo and the applicator. Now, I also understand that we were allowed a straight edge ruler and a cutting edge, and I used an X-Acto knife, but I only used it to actually take the inside of the book out. So my chosen book cover was this old used book. The reason I chose it was because I love the colour, and I loved how it was already fabric covered, and I liked the way it was worn. And I did try a hidden spine for the first time, so that was quite I won't say it was easy, but it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. But I'm really quite happy with how that turned out. So once I gutted the book out, I reinforced the spine with 3 layers of coffee dyed paper, which I sort of roughly made an impression, and I cut out 3 strips. I glued them down one on top of the other, and then I glued that into the spine. Then I made my signatures using my coffee dyed paper, so I had 10 sheets in each signature, and I sewed them using the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. And again, I used a template which I traced when I reinforced the spine. But I also made it about 1 inch wider on each side, so I could actually glue that down to the insides of the book cover. This will probably be my own journal. I'm not quite sure yet what I will use it for. I'm going to learn calligraphy next year. I've inquired about some classes, and it's just coffee dyed paper, and it's just such a lovely little journal that I actually think I will save it for when I can do some beautiful writing. I'm actually teaching myself Spencerian script, if anybody's familiar with that, with the old pen and ink. So I think that's what I'll do. I think I'll fill it with lovely bits of penmanship writing. So let's dive in. So this is the cover. So what I did was I cut the butterfly out because I thought that was just so beautiful, so I used that. There's a little bit of fabric here that I cut just a blank piece without any pattern on it, and then I cut this image here, and that's what I used for the front cover. And then when I was making the signatures and I was tearing the edges, because I absolutely love how that turned out. So I had all these long little strips, and it was just, this pile was growing and growing and growing on my workspace, and I thought, what shall I do with this? And then I remembered seeing a tutorial about making paper flowers, so I thought, well, I'll give that a go. And I had the distress ink so I could dye it as well, and I was quite happy with how that turned out. And these little fibres on the back are from when I was cutting all the material up, and yeah, I was getting all the little strands of fabric, so I just sort of made that as a background, and I think it turned out quite well. So shall we dive in and have a look? So this is the inside, just make sure I've got that in view there. And so I lined the inside covers with fabric, and I made a little pocket on the inside, and this is my first tag. So I made my tags by gluing bits of, well, actually I got the paper and I folded it into thirds and glued it. And here comes my cat. I don't know if you'll see her, but my cat's just jumped on the table. Yeah, so I just did a little bit of collage, and I distressed the edges, and I made a little round eyelet there, and that can tuck quite nicely in there. So when I made the book, I sort of felt it needed another signature, because if you can see here, not sure if I'm holding this. This is my first video, guys, so bear with me, please. There's a little bit of a gap here, and I was looking at it, I was thinking I probably should have done 4 signatures, but it was too late because I'd already sewed it all in, and of course I did this hidden spine. So therefore I thought, how can I fix this? And so I made a little booklet. So I used a little bit of strip of fabric for the spine, and I did another little flower to decorate it, and I just put a little pocket on the front page there just to tuck it in, and that seems to have done the trick. So with the paper, I ripped the edges because I was sort of getting into that deserted island feel. So, oh gosh. And then I distressed the edges of the paper. So when I cut out the butterfly from the front, I fussy cut it so well that you could actually see the butterfly. And so what I did was I cut it out very carefully because I didn't want to waste any paper at all, and then I got the strips of the edge where I'd ripped the paper, and I glued it to make a little frame, and that's what I used as a little stencil. And then what I also did was I got the glue bottle, and I got my ink, and I dabbed that, and then I stamped it to make like the coffee cup rings. And yeah, you can see it coming through on the back there as well. So when I dye my papers, I add, like if I've got flowers, I just sort of, and they're kind of wilting, I sort of smush them in. That gives it a nice little effect. There's a little bit of fabric and a bit more of stencil that I did. That actually literally sort of landed in almost a bow shape, and I went, oh wow, I could glue that on the paper and that'll be quite pretty. So I did some more collaging there. So then I did this little corner tuck, and I will add, guys, that this is, I'm actually fairly new to junk journals, so this is probably about my 4th maybe journal that I've made. So the limited resources were really good for me. So I'm still getting used to a process, and I don't like to say that, but I'm still kind of getting used to how to make the pages interactive. So I tried this corner tuck, and I cut out a little bit of the fabric. I did try to cross stitch, but the needle that I had was too thick, and it kind of pierced the paper, so I didn't bother after that, and I didn't want to waste my paper, so I just left it. So there's my second tag. So I did a little bit more collaging, and I just used a little bit of the fabric for the tag, for the string, whatever you call that, tag string. And this is just from the paper, just a little bit of ephemera that I cut out, and just flick over. So I did some more stenciling and staining, a bit more collaging. That's a little feather on the plate. This is the middle, and I did have a go at making some beads. I've watched some tutorials from Attic Lane, and she made these paper beads, so I thought I would give that a go. So I quite like that. And I made these journal cards. Again, I just cut out the shapes, 3, and glued them together, and then I did a little bit of collaging, and I used the fabric to make little tabs, and I just made these little pockets on the inside. And then I made this little journaling space, and this I just used the edge of the stamp lid and I just rubbed it. And I will say I did get, I didn't watch many videos. I probably watched about 3 videos, and I did see one of the ladies had done this, and I thought, oh, that is such a clever idea, because actually looking at ways that I can make lines on paper like this anyway. So thank you very much for that little tip. And then I did one of my little flowers, because I like to do that. I did end up also using my needle and really pressing in, and I made a flower and a circle, and then I could use that as a cutting guide. And so I used that as and I stenciled over it. I just you know, put the flower down, and then I stenciled over it, because I just sort of felt like the butterfly was sort of getting a bit monotonous, so I wanted to break it up. And I have to say, I really do love coffee dye paper. I have used tea stain paper in the past. I just put a little fabric tab up there. It's a bit more, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a bit more of a flower there. I like that one, that turned out really well. I find coffee dye paper is quite heavy. I love the texture of it. It's definitely a bit more interesting than tea dyed paper, but I do love the delicate nature of tea dyed. So I think I would mainly stick with tea dyed papers, and maybe just put a couple of coffee dye, but I do love the smell. This book just smells like coffee. So that's my first signature. I did a little bit of collaging. Again, I don't know if this shows up, but there's a little bit of red staining on this. My stepdaughter was doing some fabric painting at the time, and I just used her dirty red water and I just pulled it onto the paper, and it did give a slight, I'm doing some Christmas journals, so I just wanted to see whether I could get some red in there. When I dry my papers, I've got these coasters, and I put them down in the middle of the paper just to weigh them down, because I do it outside. I've got patio area, so that added a little bit more texture and shape as well. So some more stenciling, and here's another tab that I made. This one was from the Attic Lane tutorial. It's a 3-pocket tag, and then I just cut out some of the ephemera, I guess you would say, from the Kaiser craft strip. And then there's this cute little journaling card, and 3 little dogs on there, a little corner tuck spot, and I did some collaging there with some fabric and some more of the Kaiser craft paper, and then this lifts up, and I just created some lines there for some journaling space. There's a little corner tuck spot in there, little fabric tab. There was a little strip of butterflies on the bottom of the other side. Yeah, the paper was 2-sided, so that was kind of good. And I cut out this strip of butterflies, so you'll see that throughout the journal as well. This is the other middle signature, and I did the 2 flower stencils, some more collaging. This is the actual test that I did to see if it was any good, that it would be a good idea, and so I cut that out and I just added a little bit of fabric. And you can see I was getting right to the end of my scraps here, but I did not waste anything. In fact, over here I have got, I'll take this out, this is literally all I have left of the fabric and the paper, just 4 little beads left over. So yeah, a bit more of a journaling space there, and some more stenciling, texture from the coffee dye. There's another 3 sheets here. There's another little bit of fabric that I did in the flower. More coffee dye, another tab, some stenciling, some flower images. This is a little pocket. I was running out of things at this point, but I just wanted to add a little bit. This is a cover of the 3rd signature, and I made a plainer flower, so I was quite impressed with how they turned out, so I wanted to give it another go. Some more stenciling, some collaging. That is just really awesome how that kind of spread out on the page. Flower stencil, and this is, I think this is my last tag here. A bit of journaling space, and a little bit of like a card, and some lines there. Whoops, I always do that, keep forgetting to take that out before I flip that up. So I think we're getting near to the end. I put a little bit of fabric. I tried to use absolutely everything up. There's another pocket in the middle. There's the flower that I used to stencil over, and here is my my butterfly, very well stenciled. So I wanted to keep that one. And this is another journaling card. As I said, fairly new to this, and I just love this collaging. Obviously I watch tutorials on YouTube. My favourites are Wendy's Journal Adventure, Nick the Booksmith obviously, and Gay Agnestelli. I hope I got that name right. I'm sorry if I didn't, but she's very well known. I'm sure you know who she is. And there's another lady that I've just started watching, Jackie. She's one of Wendy's friends. She does a lot of swaps with Wendy's, and I love her style. So that's why I've been doing the collaging. And there's the flower there. And I think this might be it, guys. I think this is the last little bit of feature of the book, and the rest are just the coffee dyed papers. And then on the very back page I've got my beautiful little, I think that's a crane, and that's why I chose the fabric, because I just love all these images. So that's my book, guys. I'm glad it's done. I did it in a weekend, so that was a real push for me. Usually I just sort of work on them and just do them a bit at a time, but yep, I got this all finished, which was really good. I'm going to have a play with it now. I'll probably put a little closure on that, and I might put some more tabs on there and some charms, because I love doing that sort of stuff as well. But thank you very much for watching my